Hello and welcome to Dimsy's Domain. Today we have a very special guest to discuss Yugioh Vrains Season 1. And let me just tell you, they know a lot. They know everything. Please welcome Dylan from YugiohEverything.
Thank you very much for the hype, Dimsy. I'm very happy to be here. I am Dylan from YugiohEverything, and I'm very excited to talk about Season 1 of Yugioh Vrains.
And before we carry on, please make sure, I'm sure you've heard of him already, but please make sure to subscribe to his channels. Very, very, very well-researched trivia and original opinions. So, let's begin. Regarding Yugioh Vrains Season 1, I think that he started off extremely strong. Extremely strong to a sense whereby as soon as it began, we thought and we knew that it's a completely different series. I know it's a different series, but it felt different. It had a different feel to it compared to Arc 5. Now, many people have a lot of thoughts regarding Arc 5, but well, hey, me and YugiohEverything spoke about Arc 5, and that video's linked down below. So, what do you think about the start, the opener, the first couple of episodes, maybe the first 5 or 6 episodes of Yugioh Vrains Season 1?
I thought it started extremely well. I really do think that. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and talk about, the whole season right away, but I think the season started off really well. What they did extraordinarily well and extraordinarily different from, I feel, most Yu-Gi-Oh shows is a lot of plot-only episodes in the beginning. The very first episode was pure plot. It's the first time in Yu-Gi-Oh where we didn't have a duel in the first episode, and it was a world-building episode. Then we later had a plot episode dedicated to Aoi's Eyes, and then we had a plot episode dedicated to Go Onizuka, and they built up the cast of characters really well, and I feel like as the season went on, we kind of lost that a little bit. We lost that world building. We lost those plot-only episodes, which definitely helped with the overall story and the character development. But we'll get into that, I guess, later in this video. But early on, I thought it started off very, very strong.
I completely agree. I think that the plot-only episodes were very different, and as I said earlier, it just felt different. It felt different in every single possible way. In Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, they kind of made it a thing to try and have a duel per episode, and that was the new movement, I guess, in these series. But it felt like they're harkening back to the original times, whereby let's focus on the plot and let's kind of build this character so the audience get invested, because that's the thing with Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. I think that they didn't allow the audience to get invested in certain characters, and I think that certain characters were wasted. And with the massive ensemble that was Arc 5, it was a major contrast when you saw Yugioh Vrains, where we had a very small cast. It was very contained, and at the same time, they didn't really focus on other people apart from Yusaku, apart from Naoki, Aoi, who else is there? Go, and I guess Akira. And of course, Revolver,
Emma too.
Emma as well. I do think that it was a very, very contained cast to focus on, and that was his biggest advantage at first, but it became his biggest weakness after. And I guess I'll speak on that point later on. But in terms of the dueling, so speed duels, how did it feel? What did you think about it? And did you think that this was something you're going to get bored of, or you could actually see going on as you go further down the line?
So speed duels, early on, I didn't really love them, just because even going back to Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, which is one of my favorite shows, or my favorite shows for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, I didn't even like the riding duels, and even in Arc 5, I didn't like the riding duels. I don't know, I'm just a very classic guy where I just like the master duels when two people are just, standing, facing each other mano to mano. So, the speed duels, I didn't really love. I felt like they were, I don't really know what it was about them that I didn't like, but I still prefer master duels way more than speed duels, and it was the same case for 5Ds and Arc 5 as well.
I think this is going to be the first major point that we disagree on, because I think that the speed duels really added a different flavor, because the way they said how if you fall off from your D-board, you can actually hurt yourself physically, mentally, and it kind of added stakes to it. But what I would agree is that it was starting to get a bit tiresome, because too many speed duels, and as it was very early on, and it seemed like speed duels have not been in Link Vrains for a while, it was quite repetitive. Okay, activate the skill, cool, and that's how you get a new monster. And I guess that's to be expected early on, and it's me being a bit a bit unreasonable, but I think the speed duels added a much needed difference to the series. However, as you pointed out, when they did showcase some master duels, my goodness, was it good. Now, in terms of the dueling itself, regardless of speed duels, regardless of master duels, do you think that the skill they showcased was to a standard that was better than Arc 5 or its predecessors? What did you think of the standard of dueling itself?
So that's a good question. Also, you make a very good point on that. I think having the stakes where if you fall off the board, you can die. See, it was good at the beginning, but it almost started to contradict itself because we would see scenes where, for instance, Dr. Gnome and his duel against Go, he literally fell to the ground after the duel and like face planted. We saw it with Blue Angel too against, well, that was a master duel, but people would fly through buildings in speed duels and they were completely fine. Even though in the very first episode of the second episode, Playmaker's Ignis Eye said, if you take major damage, it will affect you in the real world. But we didn't really see that. And so I felt like the foundation was really good, but the execution in that sense could have been a little better. But still, back to your main question about the standard of dueling, I feel like it has kind of gone down a little bit. I've enjoyed it, don't get me wrong, but I just think we were so spoiled with Arc 5, having duelists like Akaba Reiji and even Yuya and all these duelists that were able to, master all these different summoning methods and see these different summoning techniques verse off against each other. And I think we were just so used to that for 3 years that now we get Yugioh Vrains, which removes all of that aspects from dueling. I think the standard compared to Arc 5 has gone down, but Arc 5 is probably the highest standard dueling quality that we will ever see in a Yu-Gi-Oh show.
You're missing the different summoning methods, and I'm sure in season 2 when we saw the ritual summon, that must have been a massive treat for you and must have put
that was great
smile
moment
to your face.
Absolute great moment. I'm sure a lot of people were very happy.
Regarding the quality of dueling, I would agree it was very repetitive at first. However, there were certain Easter eggs in certain duels. For example, when we saw Go against Playmaker, which me personally, as a massive wrestling fan, I completely marked out. Him using wrestling terminology, him having monsters which mimicked the whole, Goki suplex and what suplex, I guess. But the point being was, I think there was a lot of Easter eggs that they inserted into the dueling itself that kind of made the audience feel like, oh wow, that's quite cool. In terms of the quality of dueling, as well as the narrative being told whilst dueling, was perfectly executed. And I have to focus on the way they Spectre vs Blue Angel and the way they kind of those mind games and they told Blue Angel's story. It felt more deeper than just a kids show. It felt more than just, oh yeah, this girl, she's kind of lonely. No, there's so much more to it. So to bounce off my previous question, I'll say to you, what did you think of the narrative unfolding throughout the duels and just throughout the story itself? And do you think it was well executed? And just remember, guys, we are only looking at season 1 of Yugioh Vrains.
Yeah, the narratives I thought were very good. And the narrative, I mean, you already touched the Blue Angel Spectre. That duel was awesome, and was probably the last really unpredictable duel of season 1, in my opinion, which was kind of another issue I had with kind of how predictable, and you could kind of see what the results were going to be down the road. But enough with that. In terms of the narrative was great, and the one duel that I thought the narrative was incredible was Playmaker versus Akira. I cannot get over that duel. Yes. That duel was just masterful, between getting the Zaizen's backstory and why Akira is in the position that he's in, and then, finally getting Playmaker's horrific childhood and horrific backstory, and then you learn literally why he's so secluded from society and why he's so, against everything. And even Spectre, when he talked about his story during his duel against Playmaker, I think the narratives in a lot of these duels have been really, really good, and it's been really, really enjoyable.
And it's quite interesting because this is the first time that we're truly touching on this topic 10 minutes into it. It's Yugioh Vrains, we got the protagonist called Yusaku Fujiki, but we're not really speaking about Yusaku. So let's get the conversation, let's get the topic to Yusaku and, most importantly, the Ignis known as I personally, oh, that's a pun, I guess. I personally found them so different to every other combo for protagonist as well as dual spirit or just partner in general. I think that it was very unique. Initially, if you look at Playmaker Yusaku on paper, he seemed very bland, and that's the thing. I think that the Ignis, he just gave this new dynamic, just the interactions between himself, Playmaker himself, Kusanagi. It was so well done. And that's okay, I guess that's another thing. Kusanagi, I, and Playmaker, what a fantastic trio they are. And the introduction of us being made aware of Aoi as well as Go, which we know they're gonna team up later on, but just the initial Holy Trinity and just the way they worked was so well done. What did you think about the comedy that is provided from the Ignis Eye?
Yeah, the comedy I think has been kind of hit or miss, but more, I think it's been a necessary hit or miss, because I try to think of it like there's times where, Ignis annoys me and I think, well, if we remove him from the equation and we just watch Playmaker, how much dialogue is really going to be there during these duels, right? Playmaker's just going to talk about the cards and the cards effect. There's not going to be any strategy talking. He's not going to talk to himself, and he's not a character like Yuya, who's able to maybe, or Yusei, who's maybe able to like carry the duel themselves in terms of narrative. So I think even though some of the jokes annoy me and Ignis does things that annoy me, there's also times where I've literally laughed out loud watching the episode because some of the jokes have been hilarious and unexpected. So for me, it's been a little hit or miss, but I think it's necessary, and I'm glad we have that combo. And you used the word before, unique. It's very unique, and Yusaku is a much different protagonist than we have ever had in Yu-Gi-Oh! And when you're working on your 6th Yu-Gi-Oh! Show, or you're watching your 6th Yu-Gi-Oh! Show, you've pretty much seen it all. So it's a really good taste of breath of fresh air, and I really have liked the combination between both of them.
See, we focus a lot on the positives. Now let's kind of play devil's advocate, and let's talk about what happened 13 episodes into this new series, as well as 21 episodes in, and 29, as well as 38. We got 4 bloody recaps in one season. I'm not going to say any more, but do you want to make a comment on that?
Yeah, well, to make it even sound worse, we got 4 recaps in a span of 25 episodes. Wow. I think that is absolutely jarring. Of course, the director, after the 21 recap, the 29 recap, and the 38 recap, issued immediate apologies on Twitter. I don't think that we really can blame any one person or any group. I don't really know what's to blame. I've heard so many different theories from people in my comment section, so many different theories from people who are pretty well informed, even more well informed than I am in a lot of these things on Twitter, and no one really has an answer. But there has been remorse shown by the director, and when you are working on a series that's going to air, and Studio Gallop has been doing this now for almost 2 decades, every week, and I think you get 2 breaks a year, that's grueling. And if you fall behind production, remember there was a month break between Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 and Yugioh Vrains, probably because of production issues, and even with that 1 month break, which has never happened before between 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows, they still had these issues where they had to do 4 recaps in a matter of 25 episodes. I don't really know who to blame. Myself as a fan, it doesn't really anger me or take anything away from Vrains. To me, I know to other people they'll say the complete opposite. I just kind of get upset by it because it's like it's a studio that I loved, that I think we all owe a lot to for, animating this show and working on this show that we've all loved for the last 2 decades, for the last 18, 19, 20 years. And to see them struggling so heavily without any way that we can help them, it makes you feel kind of helpless. So I more feel sad about the situation. But yeah, you can't really talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains without at least mentioning the recaps, unfortunately.
In terms of the recaps and how they were placed, and I was about to make a video about this, but I just really I wasn't bothered. It really took me away from Vrains. It kind of put the hard breaks onto Yugioh Vrains, and I think that the middle of the first season really does suffer, and it is mainly because of these breaks. And I'm just speaking from my personal experience. I was like, okay, you know what is going on? After the first break, I guess there was still hype towards the Ghost Girl duel, and that's also because of the fact that she's the second proper female duelist that we were introduced to, and everyone was excited what's going to happen, but the second, third and fourth one was it was too much. So if I were to give my quick story, I loved the beginning, I hated the middle, and I really did love the ending. And the reason I love the ending is purely because of Revolver and Playmaker, as well as Spectre, just the whole Tower of Hanoi. The thing is, when they introduced another plot point, people being turned to another's, it was very dark. It felt very Shadow Realm-esque for the English dub kids who watched it back in the day. I think the stakes were higher, and that's one thing about Yugioh Vrains. The stakes were always there. And you know how you said earlier how certain duels felt predictable? I would disagree on the last part where I really didn't know who's gonna win from Playmaker against Revolver. I think that was its biggest advantage, because we know each of them have to win. And then when Playmaker did win eventually, my goodness, was it dark. Kogami was pretty much dead. We saw his dead body. We see Revolver. We saw a lot of things, and the quality of dueling, especially on that final duel, I can only sing its praises so much. I think that it was one of the best, and it's probably one of the best duels we've seen in a long while in the Yu-Gi-Oh series. Now, I'm not going to say it's the best one, because I'm sure you're going to be doing some sort of list to tell me why I'm wrong, and to tell everyone what the best duels are throughout the series. But I found a very, very, very strong, tactical, and emotional duel. So what would you say is the major plus points? What would you say are the major highs of the first season? And of course, you could follow that up with its major lows, and then what your overall feelings and thoughts towards this first season is.
Yeah, so first off, I agree with you completely. The Revolver Playmaker duel at the end was, I thought, magnificent. I absolutely love that duel, and I will also say that it probably was a little unpredictable. That was the one duel that was maybe really the last, 10 duels that was very unpredictable. When going back to the predictability, once for another sequence, that was my probably big negative, how I think predictable the duels became after Blue Angel lost to Spectre. Because if Blue Angel beats Spectre, then things are still up in the air, right? Is maybe Go versus Revolver, then maybe Go has a chance to beat Revolver, and then we'll have Playmaker, Blue Angel, and Go versus Kogami. So then all of a sudden the Go versus Revolver duel is a little more up in the air. Of course, Kogami didn't end up dueling, but this is way back, in episode 31, before we find out that he's dying and does eventually die. So that was the one duel that I think once that happened, we kind of lost the unpredictability factor. We knew, right, that Go was going to lose as well. So when Playmaker versus Spectre happened, we all knew Playmaker was going to win. When Go versus Revolver happened, we all knew Revolver had an easy win. And we knew that it had to be Playmaker versus Revolver. So I think a lot of the duels towards the climax were predictable. I think it was very Playmaker-centric, which was another issue I had. Everything was involved around Playmaker, which, I loved Playmaker, but I understand if you didn't really like his character, I understand why that would be a problem for you, because everything, again, was so focused around him. With all that said, though, those are the negatives. I still felt it was a very strong season. I really enjoyed the first season. I thought the rivalry and dynamic between Playmaker and Revolver was a joy to watch. I thought Spectre was the villain that Vrains needed for the first 30 episodes, and so when he came in and, caused hell for a month and a half, I thought that was great to see. And just, there's still so many questions, even with Season 2 starting, that we don't have the answer to. And Season 1, the first probably third of Yugioh Vrains, I think really set the stage for what could be a very, very strong Season 2 and Season 3. Still a lot of questions left unanswered. Still a lot of chess pieces that need to be moved around. And I thought overall, Season 1... strong. I'd probably give it maybe a 7.5 out of 10. I did enjoy it. The recaps didn't hinder it anyway for me also.
I see. Well, I would agree the fact that it was a good season. I wouldn't personally, just speaking from my experience, I wouldn't call it strong. However, I know for a fact that's going to creep up to maybe 8 as the seasons go along, because I feel like in terms of the overarching, all of the episodes in Yugioh Vrains, when I look back at it, Season 1 is going to be the perfect pedestal to just, really shoot off in terms of plot points and the way the narrative unfolds. So I know I'm going to appreciate that properly and more generously as time goes on. However, I do think that for me to just lose interest during the middle is very telling. Also, as you mentioned earlier, how it was always Playmaker, Playmaker, Playmaker. One thing that Season 1 was lacking was they started off with all this world building. However, at the end, do you know what it felt like? It felt very secluded. It felt very isolated. Link Vrains this massive, infinitely large and spatial cyberspace where everyone can populate it. Just felt like it's for the cool kids club. It's for people who are popular or people who are just celebrities to go to. It's like, as you hear on the news outlets, that okay, there's certain nightclubs where only A-list celebrities can go, and this was the thing with the whole charisma duelist, etc. It felt so down empty and isolated for millions of people to potentially go inside Link Vrains in and out, and just seeing a couple of people hogging the spotlight. Nah. And one thing which Yugioh Vrains Season 1 has missed, and I hope they address this sooner or later. If you've noticed in Duel Monsters GX, 5D, Zexal, as well as Arc 5, they've always had a live audience. They've always had an audience right in front of the duelists. This hasn't had that. They cut away to, I don't know, Naoki in school. They cut away to people just on the virtual realm, but there's no real stadium full of people. I feel empty. It feels empty. It doesn't feel like it's worth the stakes. It's worth the grandeur of them being charisma duelists, and that's one thing it seriously lacked, in my opinion. I think that it felt isolated. I feel like they need to desperately expand the cast, which they are doing in Season 2, and it's a breath of fresh air. But the positives are a strong start, a different start, different characters, different dynamics, very, very unique humor. Also, the innuendos are there plenty, and with that, I think that's just my points regarding Season 1. I'm trying to figure out if I've missed anything at all. Dueling was fine, the characters were fine, and yeah, I think that's that. Is there anything else you want to mention?
The other thing, you make a lot of good points, Timsy, is will Yugioh Vrains have a tournament arc? We've seen a tournament arc literally in every Yu-Gi-Oh, and that could give you your opportunity to see a big stadium filled with people, because that's like a very unique kind of thing to say, but now that you mention it, you're right. It does kind of bring a little more intensity to these duels and kind of bring some showmanship to these duels. So it would be cool and very interesting to see if we get a tournament arc and we get kind of like a stadium tournament arc. That would be pretty awesome.
And hopefully they can build on the characters as well as introduce the other lost kids. So, but these are speculations and things to be told in the latter seasons to come. Anyway, guys, I really do hope you enjoyed this. Please make sure to check out Yugioh Everything. Honestly, everything you need regarding Yu-Gi-Oh is there. Just subscribe to him if you're not already. The discussions, the top 10s, the news videos, the spoiler videos, everything is there, handed on a plate. Well, not really a plate, via a red button where you press subscribe. So please do me a favor and check him out. Also, check out the Yugioh Vrains fan page. It's linked down below. It's a Facebook fan page which has 2,090 people. I hope he gets 20,000 sooner or later, so please make sure you come. And with that being said, please make sure to like, share and subscribe with your duel disc. You may now exit Dimsy's domain. Thank you, goodbye.